Mixed Messages is a podcast by Bree Graham and Emily Madigan, two mixed women trying to navigate the complexities of living between multiple communities in these divided times. On today's episode, we are talking to activists Marla and Paola, two women who are taking to the streets to ensure that your voice is heard. We're talking today about voter suppression and what we can do to change that. So, let's get into it.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on today's episode of Mixed Messages. We have two amazing humans and activists, Paola and Marla, who are joining us from NYC to talk a little bit about, or a lot of bit about, the activism that they are doing out there right now. And all that fun stuff.
So, let's get some introductions out of the way. We already know your names, Marla and Paola, but would you please introduce yourselves and tell us how you identify in whatever capacity that you would like to share?
Sure. My name is Paola Hernandez. I am she, her, hers, and I am also a proud Boricua, Puerto Riqueña, proud and very, very loud about it.
We wouldn't have it any other way. I am a proud Haitian American. I was born in Haiti, and I'm a formerly undocumented immigrant. I like to lead with that because it kind of speaks to the work that I'm doing right now. I'm also a performer in the city, as well as finishing my computer science degree at Fordham as we speak. So taking a little break to talk to you guys so I can dive right back into my studies. But and I founded...
Girl.
Oh my God.
Oh, she's smart too. She's talented and she's smart. Okay, all right.
You said computer sciences. I said,
When Emily reached out, I was just like, because she asked me about what I was doing and she wanted to talk about the organization that I'm working with. And I'm like, nope, I'm bringing Marla in. I can't speak the way that Marla does about this little baby of hers.
Well, you're outreach queen, so you definitely can. I appreciate you saying that, though. Thank you, girl. I founded Claim Our Space now 4 months ago, and I'm very blessed to have an awesome team with Paola on it. And we're getting the work done, trying to get our folks galvanized and out here excited for civic engagement and also fighting for Black lives.
that is the best segue into the next question, which is just tell us a bit about what you are currently working on during this election season.
The project that we're working on right now is a pretty hefty initiative, especially being so new. It's called Claim the Vote, a play on what we're doing as an organization, which is Claim Our Space Now, all with the intention of, one, educating our communities, Black and BIPOC as a whole, as well as the intersections beyond that. So we know that there are only 1 in 5 LGBTQ people that are registered to vote. I'm sure that metric has changed since our exceptional National Voter Registration Day. It broke records. I think we had 135,000 new voters that came out or new registered voters, which is exciting. Across the United States, it's really exciting, especially seeing that organizations like ourselves are really pushing for inclusivity and intersectionality the same way and getting people excited to go to the polls. And all of that, just like it's a lot of education, galvanizing, really energizing our folks. We know that a lot of people come from different backgrounds and all have different reasons for voting, but we want to make sure that we make it clear that those differences come together to show that we have to make a change now. So that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, so what does registering voters look like and why is that important?
Actually, today we've been doing National Voter Registration pop-ups as well as census filling out as well. I didn't say that correctly, filling out people's census form, because we have 4 more days left until September 30th, which is the deadline. And we know that claiming space involves claiming the funds that are available through filling out the census, claiming businesses, claiming our history even. So we're making sure that we are showing up in our communities, meeting them where they're at. We have different, in order to do that, I'm sure I'll pass it off to Paola in terms of intersectionality with language, but being in the community, it means a lot in having like translators and ASL interpreters so that we can make it as accessible as possible, because we know that there have been folks left out of this conversation for far too long. And if we're going to galvanize and get people out, we have to make sure that we're meeting people where they're at too.
You see why I needed to bring Marla into this?
I'm literally, as you're like, I'm like, okay, I need to change some of these questions because that was so beautifully put and covered so many things. And I'm like, great, let me readjust. Let me get back on track. I'm going to keep up.
That sounds so fulfilling and also really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, like it's exciting work. It's as hard as it might have looked, especially because our mission is so big and wide. It's, dismantling white supremacy. It sounds like such a lofty thing, especially when people don't know just how intricately it's been woven into our systems, right? It sounds like this amoeba, this giant cloud just hanging over us, but it's actually very specific. And if you dig deep into the history and stay informed, I might as well just speak to the mission too. We have 3 tenets: inform, inspire, speak truth to power.
Why those 3 specific pillars?
We can't fight against something that we don't know about. So that's why we lead with a lot of information, and we're resource heavy. So people can come to our page, our website to really get the education that they need. But obviously with Claim the Vote, it's been with national voter registration checklists. And we've done research in 15 cities that are obviously some of the battleground states, and identified the dates that are coming up for the last day of voter registration, and when is the best time to send in your absentee ballot if you're voting that way. Making sure that people are informed, because I think that has been, I know that education has not been readily available to most folks in our communities. And I say that specifically for people of color, and, that we're not given the same or afforded the same privileges in education system. So making sure that we are as accessible as possible. I think I definitely went around in a circle there, but it just speaks to how passionate we are to make sure that we get this information out.
Okay, y'all, I'm so sorry. It's been 5 minutes. This has been 5 minutes. Moving forward, I don't want to hear not one of y'all say, "What can I do?" I don't want to hear not one of you say you don't know what to do.
Okay,
join us.
Period. And let me tell you, the website is claimoursspacenow.org, and it is so informative. It's so informational. It's very user friendly, and it has everything you could possibly need to know right in one location. So there is no excuse allowed.
There's no excuse. I don't want to hear it from y'all. I'm so serious. I feel like we have had people in our DMs. We have had people texting us. We've had people face to face saying, "What can I do? How can I help? I don't know how to be an ally." Yes, y'all do. Stop looking to only have BIPOCs, BIMPOCs. How are we saying that? How are we saying that new phrase? BIMPOCs?
Girl,
you just can't rely on us to do all of the heavy lifting for y'all, okay? We are already doing the emotional labor. We are already existing in this space. And I am so appreciative of all of the people who are doing the work, but don't ever come at me and say that you don't know what to do. Marla, you speak with such passion, and coming as somebody who personally over the last 24 hours, Emily and I have, I think we felt very drained, and our hope has been slipping away. I am so curious to know what inspires the both of you. What inspires you to do this work? What inspires you to be activists? Tell me where this comes from, please. Help me.
No, for me, it was just we don't have a voice for where I come from. We don't have a vote where I come from. There's 3.6 million Americans that don't have their right to vote for the president of the United States or have any sort of voice in Congress. But you get our taxes, you get people to go and work in the military, do all of these things, but we can't vote for our representation. We can't exercise that right, and it's voter suppression for us.
And that's all by design. There's a reason they don't want y'all to have a voice. It's been happening for years, but this administration is really taking it to the next level, even before he was elected.
Once 2016 election came, that was the most devastating time in my life. I was doing a show at the moment. We were all in a tour bus, crying our eyes out in silence, losing hope, and we're trying to do a show about love and acceptance. And you're here like, what am I supposed to do now? And that's where I started to feel so emotionally drained in terms of like, my voice doesn't matter. My vote doesn't matter. Whatever I say now, it's going to get even worse, because even when the campaign started to happen, I was racially profiled within the tour. Like, I was racially profiled in any state that we will visit, any red state specifically. I was called a spick multiple times. And I would like literally sit down and like acknowledge it, and I'm like, okay, tomorrow's a better day. I have to be the bigger person, but I can't also just like not live in my feelings and understand that this is a thing.
That's racist.
That's that mainland racism, though.
It's not that racism doesn't exist within the island, but I grew up with a variety of people that I at least was taught to consider them as equal. That was something that was ingrained in the family. And like, my mom sent me a picture of my grandmother, and my grandmother is Black. And so it opened this can of worms and can of questions of like, Mom, so how does this go? And then all of a sudden I decided to do the ancestry.com. And then the importance of the census, because my grandmother registered the census, I know how she identified as. All of a sudden you see Black people identify themselves in Puerto Rico as either Black, mulatto, or like there's another word that was so curious to me, which is pardo. Pardo means like off the ground, like from the dirt, coming from the dirt. And so at first I was like taking it very like, oh, so you're considering Black people dirty? Like, what the hell? And then my mom is like, no, I also consider it like the roots, like they are our roots.
So on a previous episode, we talked to Lillian and Alyssa about colorism on the island. And I specifically talked about how I didn't even know that there were darker skinned Latinx people, because there's virtually no representation of them. So how does the new information of your family lineage affect how you would identify?
Like with the Black history in Puerto Rico, they were trying to erase the race. I'm here trying to file the census, and I don't even know what to put, because I am not white. I am not a white person, but I'm also not just fully Black. Like, so it's just, how do I identify? I'm mixed race. So I'm just like, I don't know where that stands. So I put other, and then I go into a full almost thesis of like why you should consider biracial or mixed as one of the options.
You better go into a full thesis. Yes. That's amazing.
That took me out. That was amazing.
I know we're talking about like what got you into activism and what makes you so passionate about it. And I have to share this. Paola, I don't know if I ever told you this, but before I knew you, you were cast in the Heights, and I was the dance captain. And so the choreographer was like, these are our new castmates. And he sent me the Instagram profiles of the people that were coming into the show. And Paola's Instagram picture is her screaming in the middle of a protest. And I was like, I am very excited to meet this girl. I'm very excited.
Oh, and that was the year that the governor of Puerto Rico had resigned. So it was all these protests that were going around, seeing the unity in the island, because Hurricane Maria was such a devastating moment in our time. Being in the diaspora and then having my family there, not hearing from my family, and then all of a sudden, when I get that call from my phone, my mom's phone number,
I can't even imagine.
I can't.
But it's because of her that I want to fight. It's because she taught me to care more about others than myself. So like that for me is like my self-love. I want to, maybe I'll put that out there. Like seeing other people succeed and seeing other people happy makes me happy. And the fact that I'm helping them be happy, that's like, if I can provide something like a little like a seasoning because you need a little bit of spice somewhere, I would probably do that.
See, that's why we need y'all. That's why we need you in this fight. We need more people like Paola in this fight. We need our family from PR to have a voice. Finally, we need y'all for the fight for Black lives.
It's only possible with everybody pitching in, because it's such a big vision for like galvanizing people across color, across religion, creed, like all of those different things that have been seen as boundaries. And I think that that's why intersectionality is at the core of our mission. So you know the waves of feminism, right? Why do you think that there were waves? Well, it was because somebody's voice was missing at the table. So like the Black woman was the one that was missing at the table. It wasn't fought for as fiercely. And I should say that I'm a little worried about how things are looking in terms of the fight for Breonna Taylor, of course. But it's fighting to continue to include every voice at the table. In order for us to make these changes, it was going to take everyone. So that was my long, hefty way of saying, thank you, Paola. You're the best. You helped that rally really come together. Like you helped at church where we wanted to get the HIV testing set up and COVID testing for the rally.
Okay, what's the deal with the church?
This church was everything. We have tried so many places to just do HIV testing. We just need, because COVID, nothing's open. And so we reached out to multiple places, but they were just like afraid. They were afraid of this whole COVID situation. And then they had to say yes. And then all of a sudden, no, I don't feel like it's safe and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I'm like, hey guys, there's this Lutheran church and there's there's a rainbow flag outside. So I think we're okay. And that pastor said yes.
You want to know something about that church, girl?
What?
This is something that Bree told me the other day, but like they've been doing HIV testing since we left. So I'm about to cry on this podcast, but like it's just that's active change. They could have said no. They were our last resort. They've continued to open their doors every weekend for HIV testing. I believe COVID testing as well, but it's like seeing that active change by just showing that it's possible to reach out in the community and open the doors, like literally opening the doors to folks who need it. Sorry, and like claiming space that way. It's a manifestation of that grit and the audacity of hope.
Audacity of hope. I love that. Oh my God. So on that topic, I'm very excited to ask you this question. Marla, can you tell us a bit about what it was like starting this organization?
I giggle because it felt like such a rush. And it came from this place of trauma, of course, because of seeing George Floyd murdered right before our eyes. And I as an artist, I lead with, or was an artist before I was like, and now I'm an activist. Ha ha. I was not to say that I was never involved in like signing petitions or things like that. I just didn't know my own power, or I didn't know that everybody has a spot in activism. And the way that I was always claiming space on the internet was like sharing Black joy and excellence and across those different artist disciplines, or like even in education, like just expanding beyond and showing just how magical Black people are. For that to be disrupted by Ahmaud was first. Then the news about Breonna like resurfaced from March. Then you get George Floyd. And I was like, okay, that's a lot back to back to back. I'm mourning. This used to be my safe space. And now all I can think about is the Black plight and what's happening. So then I go back in my stupor. I listened to Beyonce quite a lot.
Same. Don't worry, you're in good company. You're in good company.
She was actually part of I can't wait to like meet her and tell her this. But Beyonce, that album, that it starts off with Bigger. After James Earl Jones gives us that beautiful balanced speech. I know it's
beautiful.
Bigger, and like dissecting the lyrics, I was like telling everyone, guys, there's something bigger coming. Like, we have to just get on the same page. We know that Black people have been robbed of the right to live unapologetically. And there's a lyric in there that says, like, life is your birthright. They hid that in the fine print. They hide that in all of the laws. They hide that in all of the different ways that Black people have been subject to discrimination and, well, just death. You think of all the different ways in which Black people have been at the bottom of the totem pole for centuries in this country and around the world, I'll say. Black people will be like this for eternity if we don't talk about it, to actively make these changes. And she uses her art that way. So I was like, okay, so let me peel this back. Now I'm in this art space. How do I apply that to the bigger scheme of things? And then that's when I thought about, like when I mentioned before, intersectionality from Fordham when I was studying. And I was like, okay, so she's a display of like Blackness, right? But then, like, with all of the protests that were happening, I felt like that was when the Black squares were coming out on Instagram. And I was like, really, y'all? Really? That's not activism. No, what we're not going to do is that. And slapping hashtag Black Lives Matter isn't active. That it might have been when it was 2013 when Trayvon died. So for me to see this repetition of these hashtags in this inactive way of showing support, it is just showing support. But how do you take that one step further? So that's where, like, this mission, it started from that trauma, seeing it, and then pulling from my inspirations from art. And obviously my frustration with people sitting back and not seeing the proof in the pudding, and seeing that the ways in which it's like the performative aspect, it can't continue this way. So that resource, that one-stop shop, so that everybody can just make it a part of their daily lives to fight for Black lives until we don't have to anymore.
Deadass, I'm mesmerized right now. I just feel like
I am too. I'm like fangirling so hard right now because my old ass is like a little crotchety, a little bit like, everything is terrible. And what, I mean,
those kids on my stoop. Like, that's for sure you.
Like, I haven't given up yet, but I do find it harder to find the hope and to find the joy and to find the grace and the love. And I'm just very inspired by you and the way you move through this world.
I feel like my cup just got refilled. I feel like I'm like I'm back to base right now. It feels really good.
I am obsessed with y'all. But yeah, that's my crazy, like, whoa, I was in trauma and now I'm full of light and ready to fight this thing. So I'm just, I am truly sitting back and after like, this is the first time I've talked about it at length, really, just seeing how big it's become in the last 4 months and the change that we've been able to affect in just Queens, the last 4 times we've popped up, like, the numbers are going to come in from today, but before, like on the 3rd week, we had gotten 11 people registered to vote, and then 6 people in the census. So that brought literally $13,800 to the district just by being there and making sure that people know it's not just like, hey, have you filled out the census? Have you felt like it's more than that? It's making sure that they know what the census does and how it's going to affect the community long term. And of course, we can only hope that those conversations continue to happen. But it starts with family from the organizational standpoint and seeing our neighbors as family as well. And moving forward because if we don't lead with love, then where are we going to get,
I really, really love that. My heart right now, I feel like it's like fluttering. I'm feeling the vibes right now. This is nice.
We're here to get through every single step of the way. And we've noticed that there are different modes of suppression that continue to pop up as we try and walk people through. It just shows that it's not an accident. And seeing just how hard, at the college level, college voter suppression, because then you have to change your address to specifically where you're at. And of course, with COVID, there's folks on campus and also folks that are at home. So like there's a lack of information being spread about. And that just continues to foster that voter suppression because people don't have this information and people have to drive like 5 hours to get to a polling place. So of course it's that decreases the morale. It's like, well, if it's so hard to do, then why am I going to do it? that's always been the mentality, and it makes sense because the harder you make it, of course, people aren't going to come out in troves and vote the way that they want to. So that's part of why we're like, we no matter what modes of the voter suppression, whether it's they're taking mailboxes off the street or they're making sure that there are lines out the door, making it like a 7-hour day. It manifests so many different ways, but making sure that folks are armed with this knowledge to know that it's not an accident. They're doing this on purpose so that you don't know your power.
100%.
So continuing with voter suppression in regards to Puerto Rico, I find it interesting that Puerto Ricans don't get to vote, but are directly impacted by the U.S., specifically the Trump administration and their response
Or lack of response
to the disasters that have affected the island. Can you speak to that?
I do have to admit that this is the first time that, like, within a presidential campaign, Puerto Rico is finally being acknowledged within the plan structure of how they would like to rebuild or help Puerto Rico rebuild or get better, because to an extent, it's the USA's fault that we are a mess. Hurricane Maria, when people from all over the world wanted to help us out, they had to deliver all the stuff to the mainland in order to get to Puerto Rico. Like, so it already was a struggle for us to just be. So, like, for me, and going back to voting, is because I'm so proud of where I come from. It makes me so upset that every single election year they mention Puerto Rico, but there's no plan to action. And it's the first time that I see someone literally label out, this is what we're going to do with infrastructure. This is what we're going to do with schools. This is what we're going to do with this. And I'm literally scrolling. I'm like, this could be possible. And it was funny for me to see Biden's option or plan. And then 2 days later, all of a sudden, Trump decides to publish that they have something for Puerto Rico because Puerto Rico loves me and blah, blah. We don't know. No. May I remind you, the paper towel throwing in the most devastating time. And I will keep bringing Hurricane Maria because people forget that this was devastating. And not even that. People forgot about Katrina. And literally going to New Orleans for the tour and seeing still different houses like damaged and seeing the people like they were left out. They were left out. And it's so freaking sad. It's sad because then years later, history repeats itself with another place that you guys own because you own us. You do absolutely nothing. And then this year we found different places that had storage units with a lot of stuff that was supposed to be used for Hurricane Maria survivors. Like water, diapers, food. There were a lot of containers that were found. And the new governor in possession, after our governor resigned, knew about those. And you're here like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? People died. More than 4,000 people died because resources weren't accessible to them. Where were you? Where were you?
That man was never equipped for that job. That man never had anything to do with anything that made him qualified. You know what? We do not have the time. We do not have the time on this podcast to derail the Trump administration and talk about the ways in which he was completely and pathetically unqualified. But we could save that for another day.
And it's sad. And it's really sad because first when this whole registration for voting started to happen, after Hurricane Maria, literally a lot of Puerto Ricans moved. They moved to Texas, Florida, New York, and somewhere in Middle America. I don't remember where it was, but they don't know that they can register to vote. That happened to me for the 2016 election. I didn't know that I could register to vote until someone told me, like, do you live on a state? Do you have a license? And I'm like, yeah, I can. Just then register. I'm like, oh, okay. It's as simple as that. And then people are afraid to just release or like give up their Puerto Rican license and or exchange it with the Florida or the New York or whatever. I'm like, you just need proof or evidence that you live in Florida or in New York. It's just, they make it hell. And that's why I'm like, claim our space. Just register with Claim Our Space. We got you. We're here.
You heard the woman. Tell your friends. Okay, ladies, well, we don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah, ladies, we don't want to take up too much more of your time, but we just have a couple more questions if you don't mind. So being full-time activists, I would love to know, I think Emily and I would both love, our listeners would love to know, what do you do for self-care? How do you take care of mind, body, and soul while also having space and holding space to uplift others?
Sure. It's such a hard question because I feel like every time I take a break, it's when something also happens, and I'm like, if I'm not active enough, I'm not doing anything. But it becomes very overwhelming to your heart, your mind, your energy. I remember there was one time that I was just exhausted and I turned my phone off. I turned my computer off. I turned every sort of like social media stuff off, and I just watched. I think at that moment I was just watching Girlfriends. That's on Netflix. I literally just sat and I 20-minute episodes and just chilling. Like I don't want to be rubbed about what's going on in real life. And even though Girlfriends brings like subjects that are still relevant, it touches the subject, but it doesn't make you feel like your world is ending. And definitely like trying to see people within the COVID, rules now. But I've been always hanging out with the people that have been quarantining themselves as well. So we are kind of like our quarantine hanging group. And whenever they said, hey, we're going to the beach on Saturday, do you want to go? Beach, nature, for me, it's a thing. Like if I'm not close to the water, I'm an island girl. Like it's just, I have to. So I guess being in contact with nature was a thing. I started therapy as well. So like I needed therapy. I needed to just talk to someone and just be for a second and not feel like, it's not feel like woe is me, but woe is me at that moment with the therapist. Like, am I doing things right? Because like I always question myself if I'm doing enough. It was even like when this whole protesting thing started to happen, I remember even posting about it all the time. Like, I'm activist. I'm literally doing the thing. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? And then I was like, sometimes when you're the most quiet and just do your work, it comes out even further. Again, I'm bringing it back to the Lutheran church. It made my day. It made me feel that the hard work came through. And this time it came through very quickly. So hopefully November 4th, I'm drunk out of my mind, but it's because like it was a win, not a lose.
George. Yeah, it's absolutely necessary. And I too have therapy every Monday. I talk to my girl Danielle. She tends to yell at me, not actually yell, but like it's happened enough where she's like, Marla, if you keep putting the org before your well-being, we need you. We need you to continue in this fight.
Right. Yeah. We're big advocates for therapy on this pod.
And it's hard, especially because I am also in school finishing my degree right now, and also trying to figure out how to even navigate this space emotionally. So what I've done in order to make sure that I do take my breaks is have Tuesday, Friday off, especially with the pressure of trying to finish this degree. I absolutely have to take my break so I can even have time to read for these really interesting classes that I'm taking. Affirmative action that actually helped me continue to stay informed about where we've been in the struggle for civil rights. And also, I'm taking a history of Africa class. So like making sure that I myself am armed with knowledge that I can continue to contribute in the movement that we're trying to again, like start and spread that love like we talked about earlier. I've worked out this morning, which was great. Taking that time, just continuing to remind myself it's still a journey for me to find that perfect balance because, one, it's 2020, and two, like I feel like every time I do find a balance, there is something that kind of throws me. So making sure that I have a concrete plan. I'm going to hold on to Michelle Obama's podcast here. She was like, yeah, if you have a plan, you'll be able to continue to stay in the fight, whatever that fight might look like for you. You just have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself first. So my answer to that question is to be continued. It's happening. We're taking care of ourselves. And I have such an awesome family around me to make sure that does stay intact.
I'm so here for like activists, computer scientists, and then casually at the end, and a model. It's no big deal. That's what's up. That's what's up. I'm so here for it. Okay, ladies, this is our final question. I'm actually kind of bumming. I'm bumming that this is it. Because I feel like this conversation has been, informative to say the very least, but I want to emphasize that speaking to both of you has been empowering. It has been inspiring. I feel joyful. I feel hopeful.
Period.
Okay, ladies, what would you say to someone who feels like their vote doesn't matter?
In one sentence or less, because I'd be on a long winding train. That it does matter. And there are people that are in power that are going to continue to try and make it seem like we've talked about with voter suppression. They don't want us to come out in numbers to vote them out. So making sure that you know just how your vote is impacted, both at the local level to the national level, because that's something else that we're doing too. It's not just this general election in November. We have to flip the ticket from the bottom up at the local level with district attorneys, with there's so many different positions in office that we're not voting for, that once we start voting now and making sure we know the effect at the local level and expands beyond that, we'll see those changes each time that we go to a primary, and each time that we do our research on these folks that are in our communities making these changes with and for us. So we have to make sure that they represent us both with our interests, what we look like, what we believe in, and that starts at the local level. So yes, your vote counts. Just continue to stay informed and know who's getting into office in your local elections, and we can make this change bit by bit. That's all I got for you. And that wasn't a sentence. But.
Thank you, Marla, because that's the ending note. Like, literally, my way to say things is like, I don't want you complaining afterwards, because I think like a vote is a voice for me, and we don't get that back home. So it's just like, yeah, it's complicated and it's outdated and it needs to change, period. It needs to change. And I don't know how we can start that, but I know that at least with a vote, we start implementing change. So.
Yo, thank you so much. Today has been, like I said, informative, inspiring. I'm not kidding you. I don't have the words. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for your time and your energy with not just with us today, but in general,
and with everybody,
in everything that you're doing to further our democracy and also save our democracy.
No, thank you guys for like opening these conversations. This podcast has been so inspiring and informative for me as well. Like I'm like, let me just support my girl Emily, and I'm like, these subjects are heavy. Let me sit down, take my notebook, and take some notes. Because this is a really good podcast, and these are conversations that need to happen often. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. I'm glad that, Paola, you know these folks well. I'm sure we're going to be talking some more afterwards, so we can get this pop-up going, y'all, Minneapolis.
I was not kidding when I said new best friends. So be expecting me.
Ready.
Be expected to hear from me frequently.
The more the merrier. I love spreading this love and light, child. It's my favorite. So I'm just so grateful to be here and chatting with like-minded folks who get it, and continue to make sure that we do our part and make sure that we can get as many folks out here galvanized and energized. So thank you for holding these conversations, y'all.
I'm getting emotional. Sitting all of a sudden I was hit with I'm like, oh my God, they make me so happy. It's just a mess. It's fine. I'm okay. much to Marla and Paola for sharing their passion and their, well, genius with us today. For more information on Claim Our Space and Claim Our Vote, check out their website at claimOurSpaceNow.org. Follow us on all social media platforms and follow us wherever you stream your podcasts. If you like what you hear, leave us a review. The more reviews we get, the easier we are to find and the faster we can get our message out there. Thanks again for listening. See you next week. And don't forget to register to vote.